Good morning, welcome to EMTV. Shouldn't we all go back to campus more often? Higher education offers 2 physical lessons, or so says an epidemiologist in Leiden. And that is what we will be talking about today. But first, more news. A student from Utrecht has started a petition against the binding study advice. Because of corona, higher educational institutes cancelled the advice. Dutch universities did not, and that's not fair, so says the student from Utrecht. You can find the full article and a link to the petition at erasmusmagazine.nl. The rapid increase in number of female professors is decreasing. The 2% growth rate of 2018 was the highest ever, but has fallen back to 1%. For years, the Erasmus University has been one of the universities with the fewest female professors, but they are no longer at the bottom of those rankings. By 2025, a quarter of the professors here should be women. Academics fly too much, and the policy to reduce air travel is too weak. So says a group of young scholars. Rotterdam does not have yet a central air travel policy, but is still working on it. And do you remember the illegal Halloween party that was organized in your building? Our reporter visited the building and asked the residents how they look back on, well, that particular night.
A few weeks ago, there was a party here. Did you know about that?
I knew, but because I have an immune deficiency, I couldn't go because it felt like too risky. But I know a lot of people went. Not sure that was a good idea.
So many people showed up, a lot of people showed up, and then at 10 o'clock the security came to close the doors, and then I remember them standing in the entrance right here, and they didn't even go into the building, they just called the police because it was so overwhelming.
I mean, everyone here is a first year, so a lot of us really missed out on some stuff at senior year as well, like our big parties at the end of senior year, our prom, everything like that was kind of cancelled, and this has been going on since March.
Because we're obviously not supposed to have any gatherings or any parties. But it's obviously hard to keep up with all these restrictions since it is our first year in college.
Whenever we want to do something, we don't have any place that we can actually do it.
Common area, there's a sign saying that you're only allowed 4 people in the common area and you have to wear masks, but no one really follows that. But yeah.
Yeah, all these students miss student life at campus, and student unions argue for opening up campus again. And here with me in the studio is Jason Pridmore. He's the Vice Dean of Education at the Erasmus School of History, Culture and Communication. Jason, more physical education and, well, being more on a campus, isn't that a dream for all of us at the moment? But do you think it's a good idea?
Yeah, that's a difficult question because, of course, it is the dream. I think it's clear that the lecturers in my faculty, and I think in every faculty, would much rather be on campus, much rather be connecting. We've learned a lot through the digital process, using digital technology. But is it a good idea? I think we need to wait a bit to see when the advice might be there to say actually this is much more reasonable. And I get that. Of course, there's a push by students for this, but frankly, there's a push by my lecturers. There's a push by a number of staff members to try and do this as quickly as possible. And I think if in your faculties at Erasmus you haven't learned one thing about large institutions is that they are risk averse. And I think with good reason.
Because would you worry because you're the dean, vice dean of education, would you worry if you say come all back? Would you worry for the risk that you're putting people in also?
Absolutely. For me, that's the fundamental thing that does keep me up at night. I have these scenarios in which, even though we're following regulations, one of my classes within ESHCC happens to be one that ends up being a spreader event because not purposely, but because of accidents and because of just carelessness, because we still struggle with following basic rules, and I think that's what I worry about, and it would be a nightmare to see it traced back to one of the classes in my faculty, and That's not what I would like to see happen.
I can imagine. We also have two virtually present guests. The first one is Lyle Muns. He is chairman of the National Student Nation, and also here is Younes Assou. He's the vice president of the University Council, and what's the most important, he's also, of course, a student from our university. Welcome to the both of you.
Thank you.
Lyle, to start with you, you argue for opening up campus again. What's the most important reason that you do so?
Well, I don't particularly argue for opening up the campus that are already existing. What we are saying is that higher education institutions need to rent out more physical locations, for example, empty Congress locations, empty theater buildings, and to make more physical education possible there. And basically the reason why we are doing it is because we see a big impact of all the online education on several indicators. For example, on student well-being, there are high reports of students feeling demotivated, that are having issues with concentration, but also on the quality of education. So obviously, when you're doing online education, many teachers are doing the best effort to create an online education that is good enough, but we are still seeing that there's a lot of issues with the quality of education because it's simply not as easy to have a discussion, to go in depth on the content. So both on the quality of education and also on the well-being of students, we see that the corona situation is having a huge impact, and that's why we're asking higher education institutions to be creative and to look for extra physical spaces where they can give more physical education.
I can see Younes nodding well with every word that you were saying. You fully agree, I understand, Younes.
Yes, certainly. We have seen there's an impact on the student well-being, and we should do something about it. And one of the reasons that the well-being of students has been impacted is because of not having physical education. But we still have to look up how we gonna do it, because just giving physical education to everyone will even increase the corona, and we want to prevent that. So we have to be very smart how we're gonna do it.
Yeah, but you're of course
so
both
Lyle
students.
said,
You're both students, so this is you're talking about students, but you're talking about your daily life. These are things that you recognize yourself then.
yeah, indeed.
Well, I currently, this year, I'm not studying, but of course we talk every day with tens of students that are explaining us what the issues are that they're facing. Me, myself, I was studying last semester, and I was following when the corona crisis hit in. I needed to write my thesis. And this is particularly a very important part of your education, where the interaction with your fellow students is really important, because you're doing your big research at the end of your bachelor's, and then it's really annoying that you can only see your fellow students online, that you do not even basically know them. I didn't have no idea who they were, so I was not also not very likely to be asking them for help, to be asking them questions, things that I would have done if I would have been able to meet them physically. And then after class, you go and take somebody's shoulder and ask, well, can you help me out? I'm a little bit struggling with this exercise. But now that was not happening anymore. And this is exactly the situation that hundreds of thousands of students are facing today.
Yeah, but Younes, you also heard Jason's objections, and well, how should I say this? Worrying about health and safety feels pretty fair during a pandemic. How do you feel about that?
It's true, but we also have to look at the inequality between students now. We have now students who have only small places at home that they can study at, and even you can say study. It's nearly impossible to study when you have neighbors who are drilling through the wall, or your family members are screaming all day. These are all examples that have been during the exams of a couple of students who told me, and I think this will even have an effect on them and on their well-being, because you get a lot of stress if it's on during the test day. So yeah, this was yes.
Yeah, so it's balancing different options and also different concerns. But of course, offline education only, Jason, isn't possible as well, because we have internationals going home, you have people with perhaps a corona positive. What are your worries about offline, online, this so-called hybrid how should I call it? Hybrid education?
Yeah, so hybrid education, of course, is what we're trying to do. The option to try and use more facilities like theaters and cultural event locations is a really good one, but it does complicate things, particularly for my faculty, which has a lot of international students from Canada to Australia to China to Vietnam to Spain, across this world. And of course, we want to connect with them in some way, and that becomes extra complicated when you're doing it in a space where you can't control the technology that allows you to do this. We've explored that. We have done a few courses in our own faculty in spaces like this, in cultural locations, museums, and the like. But it does come with its challenges.
And also with some more pressure, because that was last week's topic in EM, more pressure on your teachers.
Yeah, that is certainly the case that I'm struggling with as a vice dean of education. I'm having this balancing moment and being pulled. Interestingly, by teachers who want to be on campus, who want to do more physical education, who absolutely want this. By students who, of course, are reflecting these same views that we've just heard, but then also by students who are pulling back. So what we've seen is a number of students who planned on doing on campus, who then say, well, just for now, I'm going to pull back and do more hybrid and trying to do things more online. And lecturers who are doing the same thing, who are concerned about how this may affect their families and the extended relations.
Yes. And Younes and Lyle, you're both students, one perhaps on a break, but you're both in student life. What should be the first thing universities or faculties should do? The first problems they should tackle? Lyle, you can answer first, please.
So we just already discussed the issue about more physical education and then the renting out of extra locations. The idea is that this will be safe, right? Because you still have to maintain 1.5 meter distance. The reason why we want them to rent out other locations is that we want it to be able to be done safe. Because if we create more physical education within the existing institutions, then of course you cannot maintain the distance anymore. A second thing that I was thinking of is that when it comes to the quality of online education, you could also help out teachers and staff to improve the quality of online education. So of course they needed to all of a sudden switch towards this entirely new way of teaching, and some teachers might feel very comfortable with that, but some teachers might still need some support, training in how to give good online courses. So also that is something that could help out to improve the quality of the online education. And then lastly, because there is such a significant amount of mental health issues at the moment with students, there should be enough student psychologists, enough personal guidance, so enough moments that the student can get guidance from psychologists at the university, from teachers at the university. And it's now really important that we keep all those students inside, because when it's online, it's so easy to turn off the screen, to not go to class. It's so easy to lose structure in your day. So students need to get the feeling that the universities are reaching out to them.
Yes, and Younes, do you agree? Because I hear all kind of very fair topics, but also some quite expensive topics, and students want to pay less college funds this year. How do you look on that?
What Lyle said is, yeah, I'm with him. Totally agree. About if it's expensive, yes, it can be expensive, and students do want to pay less. But if the quality of education increases, the students will say, okay, we do not want to get a reduction of payment. They want to get a reduction of payment now because the quality of education is worse than they have expected. That's the only reason that they are now wanting a reduction in the payment of universities.
I think that's a fair point, and I think that's where we can end today's topic. I want to thank you both for joining us virtually. Jason, for joining here, physically in the studio. So thank you for this hybrid conversation we had about offline education. And we started the episode with a remark from an epidemiologist. And on a lighter note, we will end with one as well.
As a PhD immunologist in the United States during a pandemic, now I feel like I have a really good understanding of what climate scientists feel like all of the time.
And thank you all for watching. We will be back next Thursday here at 9 a.m. If you want to stay up to date in the meantime, check erasmusmagazine.nl.